So, anyways, this question that burns in my heart as a fantasy author,
Oh.
this question that needs an
Ooh.
answer. That what?
Owen was asking, are we storming the castle of our insecurities?
Oh, damn. That's some good analysis. Damn, Owen, that's actually very. Ooh. Well, we're back in English class again. So, anyways,
Yeah.
this week on We Are a Genius, where is fantasy heading as a genre?
Mhm.
Waiting for anyone else's thoughts
Anyway,
but mine. Anybody.
I just thought you were going to
According to Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter, I think we're on the way up.
Yes. Yes. That is, I was more so thinking of a philosophical leaning to the question, but yeah, that's a good point of practicality too, for sure. I mean, fiction just got a huge public endorsement from not only the author doing it, but of course his very loyal supporter base. It seems to me that fantasy might be making a serious comeback as being the primary way stories are told, at least for a little while again.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah. So, and since this is sort of the interview portion of us, having you on the show, I know you've written an epic fantasy series, but could you ever see yourself possibly doing a fantasy standalone?
Actually, yeah. Actually, the Darkness Holds the Sun is sort of a standalone. It's connected because it's part of the same world, but the plot is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I have that, but I haven't ever, and I have another series too, Ian's Realm, and then I have a few books that are standalones. Like Thread of the Spider is a fantasy, but that is more of a mythological fantasy. It's taken in 1920 Ireland historical fantasy that pulled in some of the Irish myth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a few standalones like that are fantasy, but they're not the epic fantasy. So I don't know if that's what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see an epic fantasy in one book. It's just,
Well, fantasy has fantasy has plenty of subgenres. Not every fantasy has to be an epic fantasy.
Right.
Yeah. Now, something that I think merits discussion is what you were just saying, where most of your stuff is a series, but you do have one standalone in that world too.
Mhm.
Tolkien was, I think, one of the first big pioneers to do it this way. And I think there may have been one or two people before him who also had traces of this. But this thing where you build a whole world and then you do multiple different stories in that world, that's something that Tolkien pioneered, and it's gained a lot of steam recently. And I think that is one of the most interesting ways to go about building a collection of work, is to build this world and then expand it as much as you can. I think that's super dope in terms of a creative path or a creative choice. It's the same, and to make a pop culture equivalent, the MCU, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that clearly is demonstrative of the love of the principle of storytelling by the common people, by people who are just story consumers, just moviegoers, just readers, or some combination thereof. It proves how much those people love that storytelling technique. Tolkien used it and achieved this household name status. The MCU did it, and it's one of the most successful, if not the most successful film franchise ever, period. Not even close. So I think that's proof that building your stories and your world that way is, great.
Well, they're even And they're even trying to go for that with, with the Harry Potter universe now, with expanding it into the Fantastic Beasts series as well.
Yep. And wasn't
And
there
obviously
another show that they were going to do?
Hmm.
Wasn't there another show they were going to do in the Harry Potter universe too, besides Fantastic Beasts?
I have no idea. Obviously, Game of Thrones is doing the same thing as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to me because you're creating these characters and they all have a past and they all are going somewhere, and people, when they're reading your book, they connect to, one or two of the characters or maybe more, and to expand them and to give them their own little, area where they can shine, it's actually a lot of fun. And when you're writing these books, you don't really want to leave the world and you don't want to leave the characters, and you want to give them offspring and, and that sort of thing. So I did kind of with Ian's Realm. I also did that. I have a couple books that are, takeoffs from the story.
Well, if you're going to create this second reality, there's always going to be more than one story to tell, or at least there is if you've managed to put any depth into it. Because if you think about how many stories there is to tell in actual reality, there's the potential for that many stories in whatever second reality you're creating.
Yeah. And speaking of, the MCU and things like that, Stan Lee was actually influenced a lot by Tolkien to create a more expanded universe. Is there anybody in particular that influences you in your writing?
Oh, well, I love Robert Jordan's writing, and he goes all over with, with everybody in his stories. Of course, Brandon Sanderson. I also like Joe Abercrombie. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And of course, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Those would have all been inspiration to me.
I am fairly new to Abercrombie, but I did read The Blade itself last year, and I was absolutely blown away by the characterization in that novel.
Yeah,
blown
I
away.
like the Shattered Seas series too. You might enjoy that one. But yeah, he's really good character development.
Now here's something I want to posit to veer the subject a little bit. How do you guys feel about stories where the author builds their own? Dresden would be a great example of this, where it's an alternate version of our own reality, and that is what the storytelling tree gets built off of. Do we think that's just as good and in its own way? Do we prefer all original worlds? I'm curious to hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I haven't read the books that you're talking about, so I'm not exactly sure. Yeah,
I'm willing to bet you'd love them. Jim Butcher, The Dresden Files. You should seriously check him out. He's got he's got over 20 out now, I think, and he's coming close to the conclusion. I think he could always pull a fast one on us and be like, "Ha, no, another 20 bucks."
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen, though.
You think so?
Yeah, because
I could see the book starting to follow Molly or his kid. I could see that.
Yeah.
So the question you're really asking here, though, is urban fantasy versus, the medieval past sort of setting.
Or just any. It doesn't necessarily have to be medieval. It could be fairly modern, but just a completely original world. Like a world where humans evolved to... This would actually make a really good book. A world where humans evolved to roughly the technology level we're at right now, but magic has always been an accepted fact of life, and people still do it. But it's a complete, and obviously it would be a completely different history and a completely different. You could still even be Earth, but the world would be so drastically changed that it would be unrecognizable as this world.
Ooh.
If you did it well.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like Dune.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
does kind of in a way. You're right. Because so in Dune, Frank Herbert tried to make it more like this is science based. These people have these powers because they've evolved to this level where they take these magic space drugs, for lack of a better term, because that's really what the spice is.
Right.
He never gets into the hard science of how the spice gives people these abilities. So you
Yep.
just kind of have to call them magic space drugs. But yeah, that is kind of like Dune, right?
Yeah, he's
Only far in the future.
like that's code for all the cocaine that that he was doing when he was writing the book.
Listen, man, I was doing rails of crystallized LSD in one nostril and methamphetamine in the next nostril. I saw some
He's always,
crazy shit.
I'm just wondering why he's always head hopping in his books. So, it's an interesting,
Yep.
method.
Yeah.
I think to go back to the question that you actually asked, I think one of the problems that you face if you're attempting to do, to use one of your phrases from your world building videos, if you're going to use an Earth-like setting, and especially one that's around more modern times, you're going to run into people being positing questions like, well, what about this? And if this is the case, well, what about that? Where I think one of the benefits of operating in an entirely created world is that you sort of have the freedom to do what you want, for
Exactly.
for lack of a better phrase.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're not limited by reality.
Right. I 100% agree. Which is to his credit as someone who's able to keep things consistent and make it look genuine. That's something Jim Butcher did in Dresden really, really well. He sold that his fantastical world could exist inside this one. Some of it he managed to stretch almost to the point of shattering my disbelief, except his storytelling and characters are so good that I was like, nah, I'll suspend my disbelief just a little bit more for you, bud.
It's so much more difficult to work out if you're going to use, more fantasy tropes, especially such as creatures and races. It's so much more difficult to work out how they would interact with our actual world, as opposed to, because you've got to think about, well, how would society function if there was orcs constantly trying to to raid the cities, and if dragons were flying around, and whereas then if you're creating your own sort of setting that's separate from reality, it's a bit easier to figure out how those fantastical beings are going to interact with that world.
I agree.
Right. And yeah, that's go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, they did try to do it with the Bright, was it? With Will Smith?
Oh yeah, with Will Smith. Yeah.
I run into some of that problem when I was doing Ian's Realm, because that's a portal travel. And so they spent some of their time here in the real world in Seattle and stuff. And some of the things I was going along and I had to stop and go back because, well, in reality, they would end up calling the police. Well, I didn't want to bring the police in on the story,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. People go, well, why didn't they just take him to the hospital? It's okay. No, we better get back into the portal where I can, make that up.
Because there's no story if they take them to the hospital. That's why, reader.
Be like, don't you understand? It's the same reason why there are never parents in,
exactly.
horror movies.
Yep.
They get in the way of the story.
Wait, there's a serial killer coming after you with a knife? okay, go down in the basement, call the cops. I'm going to go get my
Right.
Glock.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It is going to be interesting to see where fantasy moves in the future, though, because I feel like a lot of things are. I think we see a lot of things influenced by other works, but then I feel like there's so many things referencing other things that we're not quite getting as many original concepts,
Right.
which is, to take something like. So I haven't dived that deep into Sanderson yet, but when I read Mistborn, I absolutely loved that magic system, and I loved how just individual and unique it was. And I, as much as I did have some problems with Mistborn as a series, I will definitely credit Sanderson for coming up with an entirely unique thing that I had never seen anything even close to before.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, with that being said, because I think this is the reason why Brandon is moving back more into the independent sphere. Do you think that we're going to see a lot more original ideas in epic fantasy moving forward?
I do, absolutely. I'm pioneering that myself, as everyone here knows. And I think that the door is wide open for some people to really start trying to add new meat to the fantasy realm. The world is waiting for the next Tolkien. I'm at the front of the line as far as I'm concerned. Sanderson is certainly a fair match, though. We'll see who wins in the end.
Right.
I think he might have a bit of a head start on you there, Zach.
He definitely does, but you know what? That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win the race.
The tortoise and the hare.
I think in order to be really successful or to be the next Tolkien, you do have to be original. You cannot, glean too much from what everybody else has written. I think that's a mark of success, is being original.
Agreed.
Do you not think that we? Sorry, go on, Zach.
Just really quick. It's a mark that you have the true spark of creativity, in my opinion. Go ahead, Mason.
I was just going to say, do you not think we also are in danger, though, of perhaps running into a situation where we just get a lot of Sanderson clones because of how big he is going to be?
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely going to be a problem. 100% that's going to be a problem. Yeah, I mean, Tolkien clones were a whole genre. Brandon Sanderson clones are going to be a genre. And that's one of the reasons I think I might be able to catch up with him, because he's going to have real soon here, he's going to start having people clone him, and then it's going to kind of pin him into a hole and make it harder for him to expand his own universe while maintaining the originality and the freshness.
Yeah.
And that's going to slow him down. And that's when I'm coming from behind and hamstringing him.
Oh, well, I mean, and I think a lot of the cloning was going to come from the usual suspects. Traditional.
Oh yeah, the right to market people, traditional publishing. Yeah. The right to market indies and trad pub, 100%.
So, so do we think that maybe the real place for epic fantasy to actually thrive and be able to move into the future will always be independent?
Someone has their interview cap on, folks.
What?
Yeah. I think it will. The independent market, unless there's some cataclysm that drastically changes the way things are heading, independent publishing and storytelling is going to completely erase the gatekeepers in 20, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't see them lasting much longer. I mean, look at the Oscars had to stage a fake slap to get viewership, to get people to talk about them, because no one gives a fuck about the Oscars anymore. It's all a bunch of social and political elites circle jerking each other over a golden statue. It's like, we get it. You think you're great.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you haven't put out something original in the past 20 fucking years. And I'm sorry, the woke remakes, they were old before you did them.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there. Why can't they think of something, new? I mean, just rehashing the same movies over and over and over again, and the same stories and the same plot.
I will, to circle back on something Mason referenced, Bright was an example of them actually trying to do something fairly original and unique. So I'll give them credit on that one. Every now and then something is popping up that it's like, okay, that's actually a kind of an interesting concept, and let's see if it does good. I liked Bright. I think it was slightly underrated, to be quite honest. But every now and then you do still see something good pop up out of Hollywood. It's just they are so few and so far between.
Well, the best ones that I have seen are the ones that are based on a book, the adapted.
A lot of the time.
So
a lot of the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Hunger Games, that certainly has its problems, but I gotta say, I really liked the movies. I thought the movies were actually pretty damn good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Even though I will say, though, as far as the movies, and I know they were probably being more concerned about the age group that they were marketing to, but the books are a lot more gruesome.
In the Hunger Games?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're a lot more gruesome than they were in the movies.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Especially the whole thing about the wasps and things like that.
The mad dogs at the end, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I didn't particularly care for Katniss in the book either. I didn't like
the
personality at all.
Yeah, it was a little bit different in the books than it was in the movie, and I think they tweaked that in adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me curious. If they were to option your stuff for film, what, if any, changes would you allow, and what would be absolute no-nos?
Okay, so you didn't mention any particular book, but I am actually working with the screenwriter and producer on one of my young adult stories, Ian's Realm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
I am telling the screenwriter, don't do it by the book. Go this way, because because of our faults in the book, and I want to redo them. And so we're working together that way. But as long as I had a say in it, and we could polish it so it's better. So because I know where the faults are, and
Mm-hmm.
and I know how to fix them, then I think that would make the movie better than the book, because I was involved. But don't just take word for word out of the book, and it has its flaws. So,
are you liking the fact that you're getting to explore both sides of the writing fence?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I would rewrite the book if I had the ambition to do it. I'm not there right now. I don't really want to go back, because I wrote the thing in 2011, and I don't want to spend the time to rewrite it. But if we did a movie, and in the screenplay, I can rewrite it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can just say that the movie's better than the book.
But I mean, you will always have those people who argue for, well, the book was better than the movie.
Yeah, probably. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely that cultural perception that has set in that that's just something that to be expected. And I think in most cases it's accurate, and I don't actually have a problem with that stereotype existing because it's so largely based in truth. But I don't think people should let that cultural perception dictate their thought patterns. They still need
Sure.
to give every movie a chance.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I'm probably guilty of that myself. I've been doing a blog on Wheel of Time, and but there's so much in the book. There's no way you can, put it
Yeah.
into another show. It's just,
Well, see,
Well,
I think
that's the good. Go on.
go. Well, go ahead, Mason. I want to hear what you had to say.
I was going to say, well, that's the good thing about the boom in the TV culture, because we have been able to have that switch from, right, okay, we need to make this book into a movie. It needs to be a 2, maybe 3-hour film if we can, if we go that far. Maybe we'll stretch it into 1 or 2 films. These days, with Netflix and the rise of streaming TV, they have so much more space to breathe and to tell the story much more faithfully, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I actually think that perfect example. Game of Thrones is a perfect example of what you're saying. And I think roughly every season was one of the books, roughly. And then at the end, of course, they just butchered the baby. And it was like, this had the potential to go down in history as one of the single greatest television shows to ever exist. It truly could have gone down with that reputation. And then the fucking producers, or were they the writers? I don't know. They left because they wanted to do something else. It's like, you pieces of shit. You have taken something truly monumental, something truly epic, truly a masterwork of cinematic creation. And you butchered the core element of the story because you got bored? I fucking despise you as a fellow author. Fuck you.
Zach never has half feelings.
No. I am a man of extremes.
Yes.
How do you think the Rings of Power show will be received? Whilst we're on the fantasy TV topic,
based on the initial whisperings I'm hearing, not good. I haven't watched any of it yet, but I can tell you based on some stuff I've heard, I'm already irate.
Yeah, because a lot of the
Which movie are you talking about?
I was talking about the Rings of Power series, the Lord of the Rings Amazon adaptation that was due this year.
Yeah, I think it's set to come out in September.
Yes.
Yeah, and from what I've seen from a lot of the promos and interviews and back behind the scenes stuff, so far it's building up like it's going to be a woke disaster. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how I felt about Wheel of Time. So, I mean, it was entertaining, but it was not the story.
No.
Why am I not surprised? That's okay. My story.
Can I circle back to a Pink Familiar?
What?
Yes.
So when we were talking about being unique, and I was thinking about the fact that we didn't get far into your story there, but within that short amount of time, you already dropped in a fairly unique sounding creature. So I was just wondering how you came up with that.
Oh, I just wanted to be unique, I'm not.
I was just wondering
there's
whether
a couple
because
of unique creatures in it. There's also some.
Night, Owen. Love you, bro.
Yeah.
no, I love
sorry,
that.
Diane.
I thought it was. Yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say sorry, Diane. I just had to shout out the comments really quick. Want people to know that we're listening to them. But go on, Owen. Not Owen. God damn it, Zach Mason.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just saying. I just thought it was great that within such a short time period, you already dropped in such a good amount of world building, and dropping a creature like that in straight away is, I think, to people who are really into those fantastical creatures, I think that's going to be a great hook for people.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Yeah, dropping something new and shiny at the start of the fantasy book is definitely a good idea, especially if you pull it off. And hopefully, if it's not pulled off, you needed to edit more. But yeah, I agree with Mason 100%. Drop the new shiny thing in front, use it as a hook, and be original about it.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, just as so I'm a fairly fledgling author. I only started about 6 or 7 months ago now, is when I published my first short story on my channel. So I'm constantly running to Zach for advice, but Zach is another one that managed to pull off something just completely unique, or at least in terms of anything that I've read. So if we're asking about those sort of ideas, what made you decide to delve into shifters and stuff, Zach?
Well, I've always loved the concept of human-animal hybrids. Whether it's from a fantasy angle or a sci-fi angle, I've always been fascinated by it. And I wanted to... I'm going to really try really hard not to spoil here.
You better not.
So I wanted to put my own take on shifters. And that is part of why one of the main... Well, okay, so actually the reason why shifters are such a central component is because when me and Wesley were drafting this thing in my sweaty attic in a summer night during my sophomore year of high school, we were talking about some of our favorite shows and some of our favorite comics and stuff like that. And we agreed how awesome human-animal hybrids were. And so we decided we were going to build a story where that was one of the main factors, was races of human-animal hybrids. And Garden evolved from there. And so that's the actual reason why they're in the book. But as an adult who wanted to tell the story, I said, what can I do to put my own spin on these and make them completely unique, make them mine? And that's how they ended up existing as they do. That's why I give somewhat detailed explanations about how they transform and what the differences in anatomy and characteristics are like, because I'm using some pre-established conceptions, but anyone who reads my work will see towards the end I've done something pretty unique with the shifters.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting talking to authors that are operating in such a different landscape, because right now the stuff that I'm writing, obviously I'm focusing on the Bleeding Ground at the minute, which so far Zach has dubbed dark fantasy. I hadn't really come up with a label for it yet.
Oh, that's 100% the genre you're in, my friend.
Thanks for the clarification. But obviously, for the most part, up to this point, the world that the Bleeding Ground is in has been fairly normal, other than that opening chapter.
Right.
I was about to say, that
You're like,
opening
"Wait
kind
a
of sets
minute."
the stage as
You
being like, no,
realize-
there's definitely some fuckery going on.
You're like, well, no, don't you know? This is stuff that occurs all the time.
Right. You know, it's pretty routine
Yeah.
for a group of villagers to just get together on a hill and ominously chant. And, you know, the
Right.
ground starts swelling with liquid blood. You know, these are just mundane things that happen. And then, you know, the spirits of the scorned dead rise up out of the blood.
Yes.
And they just start fucking this dude up who just so happens to be the guy that killed them. You know, this is just an average Tuesday, honestly.
Right. I mean, you think that's wild. You should see what we get up to on the weekends.
Okay, point conceded. You didn't need to hammer me in the face with it. I feel like a Sherry LaPenna character right now.
Oh my god. Right? Yeah. Oh my god. Be like, yes. But at least you didn't like try and clamor yourself back to a standing position with your, you know, your hands out. Like, don't kill me. It's like, no. If you hit someone in the head with a hammer that hard, they're going down.
She's not speaking from experience, we promise.
We promise. Yeah. Well, I mean,
man.
even though some of the ways that I am a little out of context and misunderstood could give people the impression I have been hit in the head with a hammer.
I am interested though. Diana, what would you say? What advice would you give to someone like me who's sort of just starting out on the authorial journey?
Read, you know, read the books you like, read books you don't like, read books on how to write. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there that gives you, you know, information on how to begin if you don't know, you know, how to form a story. That's what I had to do. I didn't know the first thing about writing a novel. I just sat down and started writing, and then I thought, well, maybe I better find out how I should be doing this. So, you know, you get those kind of books, and then get the books that you love, and you know, especially the authors that you enjoy reading, you know. Yeah, hone your craft, you know, and don't jump ahead of yourself, and don't expect to get rich.
Oh no, I'm not expecting that. Don't worry. It's funny that you say that read authors that you like. For the most part, I'm actually more of a crime and thriller fan. So the fact that I've ended up writing a dark fantasy series has been just as surprising to me as everyone else.
I'm sure you'll get around to your crime, which I'm going to be consulting you on my 4th book. By the way, I'm telling you that right now. You are going to get that chapter by chapter, because I'm going to apply your knowledge of the genre to construct that plot and all the breadcrumbs and everything.
No, you're not consulting me. You told me not to tell you any more about Bleeding Ground because you don't want spoilers, so you don't get my advice either.
But that's the opposite reasons, though. I said, go, little dove. You're ready. Fly. I'm actively telling you, in the crime and thriller genre, my wings have been clipped. I need your help.
I am happy to help where I can.
Yeah,
it's okay.
We can both help you. Oh man, because I would have to say, crime and thriller is definitely one of my favorites, for sure. What I think would be fun is if someone were to actually morph fantasy and that.
Well, isn't that Dresden?
Yeah, kinda.
No, kind of. That's 100% what Dresden is. But I mean, for the first 10 books, it's focusing on solving mysteries, usually centered around either a mundane or supernatural crime.
Yeah,
and that's exactly how Dresden began, and there's still a heavy element of that even in the later books.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got something like Six of Crows as well, which is a heist story in a fantastical setting.
Yeah, true.
Now, I'm glad I was struggling to remember. I want to circle back to something Diane said, It was an offhanded comment, but I think it merits actually some interesting discussion. The comment about don't expect to get rich. I would argue that we, instead of telling people don't expect to get rich, why don't we collectively as a community try to come together and cultivate an expectation of originality and quality, and then we, alongside doing that at the same time, we try to create a better system than Amazon that will allow more high quality authors to excel.
I totally agree with you. I see a lot of mistakes being made by authors right now. The world is saturated with free books, and people are filling up their Kindles, and they don't have any room to buy books. Why should they buy a book? Everybody's giving them away for free. And so a lot of your quality books are not getting read because the author knows their value and they don't want to, give it away. They're just falling by the wayside, and all this ranking and everything. It's all free books. It's all, marketing, and there's no quality. I'm not going to say there's no quality, but the quality does get hidden.
I think there's certainly an argument to be made there. I would contest that in the context of promotions. Like, for so long, I'm going to give my book away for free, and then it's done.
Sure.
As a promotional tactic. But I would agree that in general, if you actually think your writing is worth something, demand something. I would agree with that in principle.
At this point, I'm going to die when you stop doing them chapter readings. Just going to die of sadness.
Yeah, that is the chapter readings on my channel, which are linked in the description for anyone who watches this. You go through the Nightbot. Nightbot is telling you where to find that playlist on my channel, my book, free. Yeah, I'm really hoping we can get up to 1.5K, Mason, because I don't want to restrict.
Screw me.
Screw me. Well, no, Mason, I was thinking that we could do the second book, the chapter readings, on the Patreon. So there you go.
Yeah.
So you're willing to give me the chapters for the small price of £5 a month?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's a fiver between friends?
I'm just fucking with you. I'll probably find a way to get them to you for free, bud.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'll just remember that. Don't worry.
Or be like, hey, let's everybody get his channel to 1.5K subs, or you hate blind people.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
That's right.
That's exactly the case.
Yeah.
Oh, man. This has been a fun discussion.
This has. So.
Alrighty. Are we about ready to does anyone have anything that they feel they need to still ask or add on? We've been on for over 2 hours now.
Yep.
And it's been a good time, but it's also been a long time.
Yes.
No, I think we've covered everything.
Alrighty. I'm glad to hear that everyone feels, satisfaction about the discussion.
Yes.
Everyone, really quick, plug your shit.
Who goes first? Not me, business. Quick.
Quick. Oh.
I am Mason in the Dark. My channel is called the same thing. I do book reviews. I do poetry. I do satirical radio advertisements and call-in shows. I basically do whatever the fuck I want. So if you want to listen to that, head over to Mason in the Dark and subscribe.
Over on YouTube, yes. And in case his performance tonight was not clear enough for you folks, the man is brilliant and deserves your attention. Caitlin?
Yep. I am Kate from Wild Writer. I do book reviews and all kinds of stuff. That's well, basically writers who don't like being told what to do. So that, yeah. Plus we have tons and tons of reaction content on our If You're Feeling Adventurous channel on YouTube, which you need to go and sub and like and comment and all of that stuff, because YouTube are a bunch of cocksuckers and they've not been good to us and gave us a strike for being sexually gratifying, even though we were reacting to a cartoon
On YouTube.
Yeah.
A cartoon exists on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
And Diane.
I'm Diane Gardner. I write as D.L. Gardner, and I have a website. It's called gardnersart.com. I'm also a screenwriter and an artist, so there's a link to my artwork on my book website that I just gave you, and you can find some of our short movies that we made on Film Freeway. We won some awards for Ian's Realm, and I'm on Patreon and Facebook and Twitter, and I have a blog called DeAndriel. Making Believe is the name of the blog, and so that's it. I write fantasy, historical fantasy, epic fantasy, and young adult fantasy. And I have a couple of just historical fiction and some romance stories out as well. So
Prolific. And if you want to get a sample of her work, see what it's all about, you can catch her first chapter read by her on Adventurous Publications. That is up, live, ready for your enjoyment and scrutiny. Okay. So, it's been good adventuring with you all. One hell of a time. I've certainly enjoyed interacting with all my co-hosts. This has been Adventurous After Dark. We got things to do, adventures to have elsewhere. We'll see you all next time. Welcome to the adventure.
Bye-bye.
Dun, dun, dun,
Da,
dun,
da, da.
dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun.